Hello everyone. So today we'll be talking about space science and how things in space are discovered. We'll be actually talking about application domains of it like dark matter, lensing and a lot more. It will be a fun ride. So yeah, let's begin. In particle physics and cosmology, a lot of complicated theories come up, but sometimes these theories are simpler than the others. For example, we talk about gravitational lensing when we talk about discovery of new celestial objects. Now it's a good sciencey term, but what does it mean and how is it helping us find stuff? Now, to understand that, first let's talk about a lens. So maybe we have glasses, maybe we have played with magnifying lenses. So lens is basically a curved piece of glass so that the scattered light from whatever you are looking at gets focused on a smaller area. Now, depending on the lens type, it can make things look bigger and clearer and sharper. So basically, if you look through a magnifying glass, it will distort your view of things that are behind it. Okay, so that's a basic concept of a lens. Now let's talk about gravity. Yes, it's the force that makes objects that have mass attract each other. Yeah, you all know that. But being a little more relativistic, it's also the force that bends the space fabric. Now, massive objects create distortions in space the same way a paperweight would create on a bedsheet. Okay. So, in 1915, when Albert Einstein invented his theory of general relativity, he treated space as malleable and he argued that the very shape of space itself can be distorted. Now, you see the space here, you see the space fabric here, and this space fabric is being bent by the earth due to its mass. Now, this property of bending the space is due to a force called gravity. Now, this is the Einstein's way of thinking at it. This is actually the core concept behind general relativity. Okay, so in this theory, objects do not orbit other objects because they are attracted together. Instead, objects travel in straight lines in curved space. Okay, the orbit of a moon around a planet is a straight line from the point of view of the moon. Now it's a mind-blowing idea. It definitely needs some kind of explanation. So we'll come back on this. So first let's think about a person walking on a straight line on the surface of the earth. Okay, now in principle, if he walks long enough, he will come back to his starting point by walking on a straight line on the curved surface of the earth. He actually ends up walking in a circle by actually walking on straight line for a long time. Okay, that's the same thing with this moon here. The moon is actually moving in straight line in curved space, but as the space around the earth is bent, it seems like the moon is following a circular path around the earth. Okay, so now that we have spoken about the lens and about gravity for the build up introduction, we'll jump into our today's topic. Today we'll be talking about a different kind of a lens. This lens is actually called a gravitational lens, and it is caused by a large mass distorting and bending space. Now that's a pretty cool idea. So let's see how it works. Here you see that sun being a massive body is bending space around it. Okay. Now we all know that light should travel in a straight line, but here you see a curved path of light in outer space. Okay, you see that this light from this distant star is curved. So that basically means that the space through which the light is traveling is bent. So if space is bent, light will bend along with it. Now, if a piece of glass can make a lens by bending the light that goes through it, why not a curved piece of space? This occurred to Einstein that if gravity bends space, it would also bend the light traveling through the space. Okay. So basically, the light that's moving from this, that's coming out from the star, is getting bent due to the property of space around this star. That's our sun. Okay. Now, to understand this further, let's first talk about a few things. Okay. For instance, a star emits light in all directions, but you can only see it at a point. That's because light has to enter your eye in order to see it, and only a small amount of starlight actually does that. That's the reason, guys, why you see a small dot in the sky. That's a star. Basically, it's a massive object, but due to very small amount of light reaching your eye, you actually conceive of it to be a small point in space. Okay. Okay. So according to Einstein's theory, the mass of a star will bend space, and light passing nearby will follow a curved path. Now you see that the light coming out from this star is directly reaching our eye. It's moving in a straight line. But when you have a intervening galaxy or a star in between, the blue galaxy has its own field of gravity and it will bend space due to that. And so the light that was moving in a straight line now moves in a curved path like this. Okay. Yeah. We see this here, right? Okay. Now let's think about what it looks like when you look into the sky. Now, since your eye does not know that the light was curved, a distant star looks like it's in the wrong place. So instead of actually knowing the position of the star is looking to be at two different positions just due to the phenomena of gravitational lens. Okay, simple, right? It's simple, but it's a wonderful observation. In fact, this was first observed in the late 80s. Here it is. Um, a double quasar Q09575661. It was a twin quasar. It's basically one quasar having two images in the sky, just like this. Okay. So what happens? Let's talk about a normal lens. What happens when you know um, it does not? When what happens when the lens is out of focus? Actually, what I mean to say is when a lens is out of focus, you will see double, right? Because light passing through the lens is not converging perfectly on the other side. Okay. So instead of creating one nicely focused image, um, it basically ends up creating two separate images of the same thing. So these two quasars were almost in focus, and between us and this quasar was a big elliptical galaxy that was serving as the lens, distorting the light just enough to create the double vision effect. But the problem is, the only nearby star that can curve space is the sun, and the sun is so bright that it blots out any stars behind it. So in 1919, Sir Arthur Eddington, he was a physicist, he used an eclipse to see past the sun. When he looked at the position of distant stars very close to the sun, he actually found out that the position of some of them weren't as expected. Okay, the effective gravity had actually altered the path of light. Now, this New York Times article of 1919 shows what they saw. So this was the actual position of the star, and light coming out from the star is being bent by our sun, and so we plot it to be somewhere here and not actually here. So you see this apparent position to be different from the actual one just because of the phenomena of gravitational lensing. Okay, but modern astronomers are not satisfied with this accuracy. Instead, Einstein extended his idea to a situation where a distant mass, this blue galaxy here, and a more distant mass, a red galaxy, okay, were aligned along a line that passes through the earth. Now, because light from this red galaxy, it can be a galaxy or a quasar, it is the light is emitted in all directions, and light emitted in many directions would be bent by intervening mass. So you see that the light here is bent by this blue galaxy. So it the red galaxy actually looked like a ring around the nearby mass. Now this is called a lensing mass. In fact, this image is called Einstein's ring. So basically, due to the presence of this mass, we cannot perfectly see the position of this red galaxy. Instead, we see a halo-like structure around this blue galaxy, and this is the phenomena of gravitational lensing. Now that the basic idea is confirmed and been observed when the lensing mass is a galaxy or even a cluster of galaxies, we can extrapolate it. So once a principle is demonstrated in physics, it can be used. And now here is where modern technology and research works come in. So you can actually use the principle of gravitational lensing to determine the mass of the lens, and this leads to an amazing use. So in normal optics, when you use a lens, you can figure out the focal length of that lens by seeing the images through it. Okay, By looking at various images through it, you can actually figure out the focal length of the lens. Much the same way, you can actually figure out the mass of this intervening blue galaxy by just looking at the image it produces. Okay, so how does it help us? Now we can use it to see the invisible. For years, astronomers suspected that there exists a form of matter called dark matter. We can finally find this using this technique. Secondly, we can resolve dark energy issues and find a possible explanation to Big Bang. Third, a question arises that can lensing help us discover planets, stars, galaxies, cluster of galaxies and all that kind of stuff? Yeah, it turns out it can. So let's talk about the first point first. Measuring dark matter using gravitational lensing. It's a big term. Let's break it down. So this is something which is a big major open topic in the field of cosmology. So let's first understand what dark matter is. Okay, I guess everyone has looked up and wondered at the night sky full of those twinkling stars. If you haven't done it, you should definitely do it today. Now, since telescopes were invented, our wonder of stargazing has only increased. With the Hubble Space Telescope, we can look deep into the cosmos, seeing birth of galaxies and all that kind of stuff. Looking at objects a little nearer, we see lovely spiral galaxies slowly twirling. Okay, I will show you this. Um, you see, one more time. Yeah. So this is a telescope point of view. It's an artistic representation of it. So you actually see the galaxies twirl. They rotate at some speed. Okay. Now it's by looking at this that the concept of dark matter was first discovered. Now during the first stages of seeing this image, physicists realized that the smudges they had long been seeing on their photographic plates were actually a collection of stars held together by gravity. Okay, which we now call galaxies. This is a galaxy image, but first scientists thought them to be smudges. Later they realized that they were stars held together by gravity, and thus it was named a galaxy. Okay, now immediately they began to apply Newton's law of gravitation and inertia and all that stuff to predict the rate at which the galaxies rotated. Basically, this rate. Yeah, this speed they wanted to predict. Okay, now this idea is simple. Just like planets orbit the sun, stars orbit galaxies. So these orbits were basically circular, and in order for a star to move in a circular path, it needs to feel a force. Now, the force that causes this orbital motion is called gravity. By measuring how the mass of the galaxy is distributed, you can actually calculate how much the galaxy basically tugs at a particular star. So, after knowing the mass distribution of the galaxy, you can actually calculate the amount of force each star in that galaxy feels. Okay. So, the force of circular motion here is actually equal to the force of gravity. So, let's talk about this first. Now, the force that takes for an object to move in a circular path depends on the object's velocity. Just like if you tie a stone to a string and spin it, the faster you will spin it, the more force will be tensed on the string. Okay. Now, the force felt on a star due to gravity depends on the mass of the galaxy in which the star is in. Okay. More the mass, stronger will be the force. Now, finally, both forces depend on the distance from the center of the galaxy to the center of the star, basically the radius. Okay, the orbit radius. Now this is a basic introductory physics. Anyone who has studied about circular motion can actually understand this better, and it's an easy concept in physics. It's not the tough part of physics. It's basically an introductory physics part, and it's very easy to comprehend. Okay, so now with a little effort, it is actually easy to calculate what known laws of physics will predict for different kind of velocities for different distances from the center of the galaxy. We have actually done that. So we predict that the stars near the center of the galaxy will orbit slowly, and the speed will increase as the star's distance from the galactic center increases. Basically, the radius is increasing, so the velocity will also increase. Now, once you get far from the center of the galaxy, the star's velocity is again predicted to be slower because weaker gravitational field. Okay. So, what is observed? Does it actually follow the prediction? So, we see that at small distances, the prediction is accurate here. Okay. But as you move away from the center of the galaxy, the stars do not move slowly and slowly. Instead, the orbital velocity of distant stars is independent of this radius. Okay. Now, a discrepancy of this magnitude, that means something is very, very wrong here, guys. So, first, let's look back at the basics. So, either we do not understand circular motion or we do not understand gravity, or these forces are not at all equal. But one hypothesis in 2013 explains all of this. It says that surrounding most of the galaxies, there is a huge amount of matter that is invisible, and this matter is causing the star's velocity to be increased as the orbit size increases. Okay. Now, this invisible matter is actually termed as dark matter, and the fact that there is about 5 times the amount of dark matter as there is normal matter makes it a hot topic in modern astrophysics. Now, there are a lot of experiments actually trying to see the invisible. Invisible, what does that mean? Now, it obviously means that we cannot see it with our eyes, but it also means that this matter does not emit heat, radio waves, or any other form of electromagnetic radiation. It's there in space, but it does not emit anything. So, you cannot use the conventional methods to notice it then. Now, you realize why is it so difficult for astronomers to actually notice it then, because it is not visible. So, how to notice it? However, dark matter has mass and therefore it can form a gravitational lens. Now, accordingly, we can use distorted image of galaxies to directly measure the mass between those distant galaxies and us. We have talked about this earlier. I basically said that we can find the mass of the intervening matter just by looking at the images. Okay. And this is important because this amount of matter we will calculate also includes the amount of invisible dark matter, so we can predict the presence of dark matter in our path of light accurately. Okay. So there has been many studies where astronomers use this technique. Basically, they use the image to predict the mass of the lens, and the lens actually, the gravitational lens actually comprises of the visible matter and also of the invisible matter. So we can basically figure out the mass of the invisible dark matter. But in 2016, a very powerful result has been found using a 570 megapixel camera. That is actually part of this experiment called the DES experiment, Dark Energy Survey. It uses a 4-meter wide telescope in Chile to study the night sky. It studies millions of different galaxies. You know, with such a large data set, they can actually look for small distortions in the shape of the galaxies to work out the amount of intervening matter. Now, you can also claim that distant galaxies are distorted on their own. So, we can claim that the distant galaxies are just weird shaped galaxies, right? But, however, here in this experiment, we look for distortions that are in common. So, if all galaxies in a cluster of galaxy have similar kind of distortion, then it is far more likely that this distortions is actually stemming from the lensing effects of the intervening matter and not the shape of the galaxy themselves. Okay. So we use these small distortions to make dark matter maps in the universe. Now, how do we measure dark matter using lensing? So what we do in computation is we create a distributed field of galaxy. Okay, we create a grid. Suppose a black image is created, and then black image full of stars is created, and then we superimpose a large invisible mass. We calculate the mass. We are basically using image processing to superimpose a invisible form of matter. And now, once the image is superimposed, we see distortions because, yeah, we are imposing intervening matter. We are calculating this intervening matter, and so we are getting some distortions. And when the distortion, that is our morphed image, and the actual image actually matches, then we can be sure of the amount of intervening matter. Okay, the basic idea is you take a base image, you superimpose a large mass that causes distortions, and you keep increasing the mass till the distortion of the morphed image and the real image is equal, and when they are equal you can just find out the amount of matter. Okay, now secondly, that's how we calculate the presence of dark matter. Now secondly, we'll try and resolve the concept of dark energy and we'll find a possible explanation to the Big Bang. Now let me tell you that dark matter and dark energy are completely different concepts. Now ordinary matter, that means stars, planets, hydrogen gases, everything combined makes about 5% of the universe. Dark matter makes about 27%, and the remaining 68% is basically dark energy. So it's important why we should resolve this, because such a large percentage after all. Now we know that universe is continuously expanding from the time of Big Bang. Basically from the beginning of time up till today, universe is constantly expanding. But due to gravity, after some time, the expansion of the universe should slow down as gravity attracts objects. So there may be three cases. Yeah. Either the universe keeps expanding forever, like it is being doing. Secondly, it can expand and suddenly at some point of time stop. And third, it can expand and stop at some point of time, and then due to its gravity, it should collapse. Now, this is far more likely because gravity tends to attract object. Okay, but there are three possibilities, and we need a sure answer. So we need to remove this discrepancy. In order to do that, we first need to understand the expansion history of the universe. Now, in order to do that, we use a class of supernovas. A supernova is basically an explosion of a dying star. Basically, when a star dies out, the explosion that occurs, that's called a supernova. Okay. Now, a supernova is very well understood, guys. If you saw one, you could actually tell the brightness of that explosion. Just like looking at a chemical compound, you can actually say what the compound is. So looking at a supernova, you can actually tell how bright or how far the um, explosion occurred, or in fact you can tell both these informations. Now to calculate the distance, let me talk about an analogy. Suppose you are looking at a source of light, a candle perhaps, and the further you are from that candle, the dimmer it will look. It's the same with galaxy. Now the probes will actually find out the amount of radiation that we are receiving, so it will actually tell you the intrinsic brightness of that explosion. And we also noticed how bright the star appeared on the telescope. So using these two, we can actually calculate the distance. And the second thing is we can calculate uh, using Doppler effect. Now what's Doppler effect? You all have heard of a train whistle passing by us. You know, when train passes us at a train station and blows a whistle, that whistle, you have seen that drop in pitch as the train passes and moves away. Now this phenomena also shows up in the study of distant galaxies and stars. Okay, so stars moving towards you will appear bluer than the stationary ones, and the stars moving away will appear redder. Also, the faster it moves, the redder it will look. Now, this color can help us determine the velocity of the expansion. This image confirms that expansion of universe is actually speeding up. Thus, there must be some form of repulsive gravity that is doing, right? That is acting here, right? Because universe should collapse due to gravity, but it's instead expanding. So there should be a force that's causing this. So this force is repulsive gravity. Now, what is the energy source for this repulsive gravity? This energy source is called dark energy. It's a hot topic currently, and many experiments are trying to prove it. Now, experiments located kilometers underground search for this dark energy that should be passing through the earth. Experiment on satellite, they probe the space looking for dark energy signatures occasionally interacting with each other. Also, some scientists are using particle accelerators, some kind of advanced cyclotrons, to actually simulate dark energy in laboratory. Okay, so okay, so finally the last point for today. Can gravitational lensing help us find a planet or star or black holes basically? Yeah, why not? But when you talk about finding a planet, suppose with gravitational lensing, it's not orbiting around this red galaxy, around this source of light, but it is rather orbiting around this lens. Now stars make great lenses because of their mass. But star system, like our solar system, can be more powerful lenses since any planet that's orbiting around the star has mass too. Right. So the sun, the earth, the other planets, they all will contribute to the curvature of the space in our solar system, right? And a shape of a star system gravitational field actually changes as the planets go around it. As the planets revolve around it, the curvature actually changes. Okay. So if a star system's lensing effect briefly has more mass, and since stars do not just randomly fluctuate mass, we can infer that what we just saw was the effect of a planet passing by its star. I know this is not clear. So let's understand this using an image. Okay. Okay. So look at this star. This is our sun. So say that we are observing a star that is way behind our sun. Okay. So in this case, this our sun is acting like a gravitational lens. We are basically talking about this image. 1 second, guys. Okay. So say that we are looking at this star, we are observing this star, and the sun is acting like a lens. Okay. So suddenly we see a blip in the brightness, and for few hours or days, um, that distant star looks a tiny bit brighter. Okay. So that star that we were observing has become brighter suddenly. So this tells us that the lens briefly got stronger, and that's the reason why the image is getting distorted. So if the lens has got briefly stronger, that means this lens star, that is our sun, has at least one planet orbiting around it, and thus we can finally confirm the presence of a planet orbiting around the star. Okay, so I hope you guys liked it. It's finally an end now. I enjoyed sharing this, and I hope you all enjoyed it too. I hope I could simplify certain things. Okay, so thank you, and may the force be with you. Okay, bye.